Okay, picture this. It's 1847. A minister in New York is walking in the woods and he sees his wife. The only problem? She's been dead and buried for 3 years. She smiles at him, lifts her hand to wave, and then her face just starts to melt. That night, he writes down one sentence, just one. And that sentence connects a forgotten empire, a lost technology, and a warning that honestly is as terrifying today as it was back then.
It was not Sarah. It was something wearing Sarah. Let that sink in for a second. That single, bone chilling line, that's the key to this whole thing. It's a phrase that just shouldn't exist where he wrote it. Why? Because almost the exact same words, describing the exact same kind of creature, were found in texts from a lost civilization written 200 years earlier and a whole ocean away.
All right, so let's get into it. The man who wrote this was Minister Ezra Whitmore. We're talking about a Yale educated, rational, deeply respected man. He was not the kind of person prone to flights of fancy or superstition. And yet, his journal, in a hand that was clearly shaking, describes seeing something that completely shattered his world. We're starting with Whitmore's story because it gives us the clearest, most vivid picture of what we're dealing with. His account is packed with these specific, unsettling details that start to form a pattern you can trace all the way across history. So, what exactly did he see? Well, he saw his wife, Sarah, but it wasn't right. Her movements were off, delayed, like someone was puppeteering a body it didn't know how to use. And then the face, it just softened, like wax too close to a candle. The sound it made was completely inhuman, something he described as hungry. He ran, and you can't blame him. He never set foot in those woods again, and his final words to his son were an order: burn the journal, because some knowledge is a curse. And here is where the story goes from being a terrifying ghost story to an impossible mystery. That phrase, something wearing Sarah, is an almost perfect translation of a description from a Tartarian manuscript from the 1650s. These texts talk about hollow ones who wear the faces of the dead. So, how on earth could a minister in New York who knew nothing of this lost Siberian culture use the exact same, incredibly specific phrasing? Ezra Whitmore's story is absolutely chilling, but it turns out he wasn't alone, not by a long shot. The more you dig into old records, the more you find these stories popping up everywhere. A trapper in Quebec sees his dead brother, but his face is like a mask of skin. A missionary in California is warned about demons that steal shapes. Villagers in India have a specific ritual of burning their dead to stop the empty men. It's the same creature with different names all over the world. So, when you pull all these accounts together, a very clear profile starts to emerge. One, they always look like a loved one who has passed away. Two, their movements are flawed, like a bad imitation. Three, their faces are just wrong. Too smooth, mouths too wide, maybe a few too many teeth, and their goal always seems to be the same: lure you away somewhere isolated. The consistency here is staggering. This doesn't sound like folklore, it sounds like eyewitness testimony to the same very real phenomenon. So you have to be asking, where did these things come from? Well, to understand the beings, the source material says we have to look at the civilization that first documented them, Tartaria. And this is where the story pivots. We go from these terrifying, isolated encounters to a possible global conspiracy. The argument is that an entire world of knowledge, a world that understood both these creatures and a form of incredible lost technology, was deliberately wiped from the history books. And our guide into this lost world is a man who claimed to be one of its last survivors. Meet Mikhail. In 1952, on his deathbed in Moscow, he laid out this incredible testimony. He claimed he was one of the last people alive who held the technical knowledge of the real Tartaria. And his message was simple and chilling. A great technology was intentionally taken apart, and the memory of it was systematically erased from history. And this is where what we're told in history books and Mikhail's testimony just completely split apart. Take the city of Kazan. To us, it's just an old city with some beautiful churches. But according to Mikhail, it was a piece of highly advanced technology, an engineered acoustic system where the entire city was designed to be a massive musical instrument. A city that, as he put it, literally sang. The concept behind this was something called architectural resonance. The idea was that the architecture wasn't just for looks, it was functional. The copper domes, the metal spires, they were all shaped to exact specifications to catch the wind and generate these organized harmonic frequencies. Frequencies that could apparently stabilize people's moods, improve health, and even lower aggression. Now, this wasn't just some primitive folk magic. We're talking about buildings tuned like violins, following complex mathematical ratios. And this system was maintained by highly trained technicians, copper specialists, who worked from detailed engineering schematics. This was advanced stuff. And according to McKeel, the knowledge was ancient, inherited from a civilization that came long before Russia even existed. So, if this incredible technology existed, and if creatures like these mimics were a known phenomenon, where did it all go? This brings us to the core claim of this whole story, that both the technology and the knowledge of these beings were suppressed together. It was a coordinated effort to rewrite our past, to erase an entire worldview that accepted things our modern science can't explain. And the process was apparently methodical, like a playbook. First, you dismantle the hardware. They sent in restoration teams to remove the functional copper domes. Then, you confiscate the software, the technical drawings, the tools. Step 3, you silence the witnesses, the engineers and specialists who knew how it all worked. And finally, you rewrite history and turn these incredible machines into nothing more than pretty decorations. And you can actually see the effect of this alleged suppression. Before about 1910, reports of these mimics are all over the place in journals, letters, local records. But after 1910, once information became more centralized and scientific, the official reports just plummet. The argument isn't that the beings disappeared, it's that the system just stopped allowing them to be reported. And this wasn't just a passive thing. People who knew too much were actively targeted. A teacher who was arrested for talking about the forgotten functions of buildings. A German engineer who published one single paper on domes being resonators and then just vanished from the academic world. You see a clear pattern here. They weren't just erasing the knowledge, they were erasing the knowers. But here's the thing about echoes. They don't just disappear. Even after a century of supposed suppression, these accounts haven't stopped. Not at all. They've just moved. They've gone from official records and journals to the dark corners of the internet. And the stories, they are exactly the same. Just take this bizarre incident from 2016. A collector in Romania finds these old photographs, and the people in them have wrong features, limbs too long, faces way too smooth. So he posts them online. Within days, the entire thread is deleted, his account is suspended, and he gets an offer for 50,000 euros for the original photos. He refuses. Soon after, his apartment is broken into, and the only thing stolen are those photos. But the story doesn't end there. The collector, a guy named Andrei Florescu, claimed that after all this happened, he started seeing them in real life. Faces in crowds that just didn't move right. This brings up a terrifying new possibility, that drawing attention to these things draws their attention to you. And the modern stories just keep coming. A hiker in Appalachia sees his dead mother on a trail, but her smile has way too many teeth. A trucker in Oregon sees his own father flag him down on the side of the road, only to watch him drop to all fours and sprint into the woods like an animal. A farmer in Scotland watches his dead mother-in-law walk backwards into a dark barn, smiling the entire time. It's the same story again and again and again. Which brings us right back to where we started, back to Ezra Whitmore. His great-great-grandson, who still possesses the journal, shared the family warning that's been passed down for 5 generations. He is convinced that just speaking about them makes them notice you. He claims that after he finally read the journal himself, he started seeing his own dead grandmother, just watching his house from a distance. All of it, the historical accounts, the lost technology, the cover-up, the modern sightings, it all leads back to this one final chilling question. It's the question that everyone who has seen these things is forced to ask. And it's the question the source material leaves us with. What do you do if they've noticed you?